All right, good morning, guys. Welcome to my Monday morning rant for the 2nd of November 2020. Time is flying, right? Um, Always got to start it with Um, um, Pretty heavy weekend. Sir Sean Connery died. I think it was Saturday, but I woke up to the news yesterday morning. Not a great way to start the day. My dad was a huge Sean Connery fan, and as a kid, he sat me down, would basically make me watch all of the James Bond films. And I'm a kid of the 80s, so at that time it was really difficult for me to watch the older movies. I was a huge Roger Moore fan. I thought Roger Moore was kind of funny. Um, And, even at that stage, I thought like the Sean Connery films looked a bit old, sounded a bit old. But in retrospect, over time, I grew to love Sean Connery a lot. And to this day, I still think he is 100% the best Bond on the planet and probably always will be. Um, So yeah, definitely a bit of a glum day yesterday. It was a grey weekend as well, so it kind of suited it. And I really did nothing much yesterday. Um, Day off. Um, Last week I had a few good podcasts. One was with Cardo. Ricardo is a fellow R32 GTR owner, and he got me on his podcast show once, and I felt like getting him back. So it was awesome to have him on. He's just such a super cool guy. So that was awesome, and someone that I would totally love to hang out with some more. Hopefully, I'll get to do that. And also had a great podcast with Matthew Haynes, who's a designer that I know from the design industry. He runs the design conference, an awesome conference in Queensland. And I watched a couple of his podcasts, and the guy has such hyper levels of energy. I had to get him on the show. And uh, true to what I had seen of him, he was pinging off the walls and the ceilings. Uh, Almost reminds me of when I was manic, but somehow he just lives like this. He's like this all the time, and uh, loved the kind of tangents that we went on. We went on a lot of tangents. He was taking DMT the very next day, so I really have to catch up with him this week and see how that went for him. I've been curious about DMT ever since I heard about it. Um, we also had a little talk about him being in a poly relationship. I found that super fascinating. Yeah, just a really open discussion. Lots of energy, especially on his behalf. So check that one out if you've got time for it. Um, Also had a podcast with Sean Cooper, who is the other half to the Hustle and Flow podcast, which he does with my mate Leslie. So I think the podcast that I did with those guys a few months back really helped me to reset. And um, I was in a really weird place at that moment. I was kind of just climbing out of the hole. I was still on my meds. And listening to that podcast back was really difficult for me. But at the same time, it made me look at it. It was almost like a mirror. And I got to see bits of myself during that podcast that I didn't like, and it made me realize I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be this negative guy. So in many ways, I attribute that podcast that I did with Leslie and Sean as the catalyst for me to find my feet again, um, and ultimately start doing these podcasts again. So many thanks to those guys. And just hanging out with Sean, he reached out to me and said, even if it was just for hangs, it would be awesome. But he also suggested like if we could do a podcast, that would be great. And I was totally down for it. Um, I'd only met him once previously in real life, and before that was the podcast that we did, and always had a great vibe off the guy. Like he's just one of those dudes, and towards the end of our podcast, I even tried to tell him to his face. He wasn't asking for it, by the way, but I just felt like I was totally compelled to just tell him what I thought about him. Um, he's just a really good human being, and what I was trying to say to him was that, like, when you have good human beings in your life, there's such a great sensation where you don't have to worry about them. They're out in the world doing their thing, and you you don't have to worry about it. Like, they're out there killing it, and it just sort of made me realize I want to be that person for my friends as well. I don't want to be someone that people worry about. And I'm especially my mum. You know, I'm super sorry about the amount of worry that I've put her through over the last few years, but yeah, it just came full circle for me, and I just really wanted to acknowledge that, and also just try my best to be a good friend to people, a friend that they don't have to worry about. Um, yeah, what a deep way to start off this morning. But yeah, great podcast. It's not obviously going to get as many listens as many of the other ones, but it's my favorite podcast that I've done recently. So if you guys have time, definitely check that one out. Um, I've also finally caved when it came to like people asking, are these podcasts going to be on iTunes or Spotify? Um, I did some research, and where I used to host my podcasts on Squarespace and publish them to iTunes, I found that that is just old school now. And there are all these hosts that host your podcast and then seed them out there to these different platforms. So I signed up to Buzzsprout. It's costing me quite a lot of money right now because I've uploaded every single episode I've ever done. So, um, you know, it's not about the money anyway. I just thought I'd do it. And it's working out great. Like, there's over 150 downloads already. So I had no idea people were really interested in downloading podcasts to listen to on their devices, but turns out it's a thing. So money well spent, and makes it all quite painless as well, which is pretty cool. Um, what else? Hung out with one of my best mates, Christy, on the weekend, and she just dropped by. You gotta love that about great friends. They just, you know, drop past, catch up. She brought her boyfriend Zlatan over, and when we were just chilling out on my deck, these two rainbow lorikeets came and just begged us for food, basically. And Zlatan comes from a small town in Europe somewhere. I'm really sorry for not remembering where, but it was so cute to see the guy like freaking out over these two birds basically eating out of Christie's hands. He just wasn't used to seeing that, and kept saying like, wow, this is crazy, this is crazy. And it's kind of normal and everyday, but I don't take it for granted either. Like, I love wildlife where I live, and I have a lot of birds around here. So it makes me think I'll actually want to set up some kind of feeding station out there, or at least go out there and spend more time with the birds and actually give them something to eat, something good to eat too, not like fucking white bread or something that's going to clog them up. Um, all right. Another thing, I'm using an online service to collect questions and answers, and I think it's working because this time around I have a ton more questions. So let's get started on those right now. Okay, so the first question is, the car scene has changed. It all seems to be about the money rather than the people. Everything feels like a business, and everyone is trying to hustle something out of you. It's like a game of who's spent more, not who's more passionate. Yeah, that's a good one, and it's a decent acknowledgement, I think, because over time I feel like kind of the same way. Like, I think when I was building the GTR, it was a really long build. It was one of those builds where, you know, you'd go out to the track and you'd just keep going until something broke. And when something broke, that's when I would look to replace those parts with something better. And it would open you up to doing more research and like cause and effect, you know? And there were even stages in that build where I had to cut corners and use some components that weren't my dream components. So Talking to Cardo on the podcast last week, he's the same way. He's constantly chipping away at his build, and it's an ongoing project. This car is not going to be done overnight. And even we talked about on the podcast how a lot of the car shows, you'd see these cars where people would just pour money into it to be ready for the car show, and you could tell these builds were done in 3 weeks or something. And then there's open checkbook builds as well, right, where the wealthier guys that are car enthusiasts want the car done as quickly as possible. Um, so I get it, but hey, there's so many different ways to build a car. So if someone wants to build a car in 3 weeks as opposed to 3 years, there's every type of person out there. So I get that some people might be jealous of people who can build a car really quick and have an open checkbook, but that's life. So personally, I do prefer people who do take their time with a build and keep refining as they go. I don't think a build has to have a deadline. Um, so yeah, my personal opinion is definitely prefer people to take their time and um, not do that whole like half-ass cut corners or modifying a car these days. You kind of almost have to destroy it, like with the wide body stuff and all this crazy shit. It's almost like you're taking a beautiful car and you're just destroying it to be cool with what's cool right now. So if when I see them take classics like an EG Civic or an old 911 and start fucking it up, there's that feeling of like, oh fuck, like it's especially bad if it's not going to be a car that's going to be with them forever. If you're a young person, you're probably going to buy one of these cars, fuck it up, and then buy many more cars. So buy, sell, buy, fuck it up, sell, buy, fuck it up, sell. So yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion on that. Next question. Why do you think Sydney creatives are super protective of their tips and locations when it comes to younger creatives asking for help? This sounds like a photography kind of question. I think a lot of photographers have these awesome locations that they love shooting at. And when somebody comes along and says, "Hey, dude, where did you shoot that?" They don't want to give away that secret because um, maybe they don't want that location to look less special in their shots. I also think there's security issues. So a lot of the time, when people find a place that they love shooting at, it's an illegal thing. They have to jump a fence or something. And so if a shit ton of photographers start shooting there, who knows? Next thing you know, there's security, and next thing you know, you can't shoot there anymore. And I'm also aware of people who feel like they've put the work in, they've put the hard yards in to find these locations. The war bunkers that I shoot out at, I found through Google Earth, and I used to mountain bike out to these structures that I would see on Google Earth. And now that I found them, I feel like, well, I definitely put the hard yards to find that shit. I stumble upon that stuff, But having said that, I think I was always the kind of creative that would believe strongly in sharing is caring. And, when I've done my 1 hour inspirational design talks at various design schools, I would show them the process of how I would build up a Photoshop file, for example. And at the end of the lectures, I would say that the files are going to be on the hard drive of the presenter computer so that you guys can all download it and just open it up in Photoshop and just pick it apart and figure out exactly how I do stuff. So part of the reasoning behind giving away all my secrets was to try to force myself in some ways to learn something new so that I have something new to share next time. So I believed that giving away my secrets was only going to make me stronger. So yeah, but there's all types of creatives, right? Like when I was running in front with Damien and Zan, we weren't huge fans of going to design conferences where design speakers that were flown in from all over the world would get up on the stage and just show off their portfolio. I'm like, fuck, dude, like I can check out your portfolio online. So why have you flown from the other side of the world to just show off your portfolio in front of 3,000 people? What I really loved was people who would get up there for an hour and actually show process, because process is king, right? So when we ran Field Trip, which was our own conference, we forced the creatives to start with a blank canvas and create an artwork from scratch in whatever medium that they were most comfortable in. And that way the audience would actually learn a thing or two. As uncomfortable as some of these presenters were, it worked a treat and people loved it and it was super constructive. So yeah, I would say to this question, like, there's, again, like the last question, there's all types of people. There's some people that keep their secrets guarded, and then there's some that don't. But I'm with you. I understand the frustration, but it's how it is. Next question. What were the wheel specs on the Zenute, our Maloo? What was involved in the bodywork to get the fitment? Where is the Ute now? Always loved that car. Right. Geez, that was a long time ago. So that Ute was owned by Claudio Capozzi, Sergio Capozzi's brother, and well, Sergio and Claudio both owned it, really. And they initially put the wheels off Sergio's S15 onto the Maloo to figure out how wide they wanted that car to be. So the wheels on the S15, which was a wide body, so they were staggered. The fronts were 20 by 9.5 plus 5, and the rears were 20 by 10.5 plus 5. So all the body work was done by the master himself, Peter from Bodyform. Peter is an absolute legend. I think he got so busy at one state that he was being very picky about what jobs he took on. I'm pretty sure he's still around, but again, he would be pretty picky about what jobs he took on, I'm sure. And he did all that body work. And then at some stage, I know Claudio took the car off the road to try to go even wider. And last I heard, him and Sergio were trying to do it themselves, and that is the last I heard. So I have zero idea where that car is now. Um, I'm sure someone out there can reach out to Claudio and try to find out. Actually, um, all right, next question. Hi Zen, I wanted to start designing some automotive products, but I'm worried someone might copy them as I would only be a small business starting out. Have you ever run into a similar situation, or can you suggest some ways to prevent it from happening? I enjoy your podcast and like how you're brutally honest throughout the conversations. It opens up a new perspective. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, bro. Um, yeah, again, it's kind of almost like how I answered the second question. Like, I've never been too worried about people stealing my ideas and my stuff. Like, I think, um, you can go the legal route and try to get copyrights and all that stuff, but then you're playing a legal game. And I've never been good at business and legalities and stuff like that. So in the past, if someone would copy my shit, I used to just use my Facebook reach or social media reach or whatever to just burn people and just like post up the person who copied. I would post them up and links to their stuff, and then I would just sit back and like watch the community just burn them down for me, And we used to do a bit of naming and shaming on the design community forums and stuff like that. If someone um, had their work copied, we would research it, and if we found that they were right about someone copying their stuff, we would expose it. You know, I also used to spend a whole lot of time trying to email these people and letting them know how upset I was that they copied my work. And, in retrospect, it just causes so much stress and starts to eat away into the time that you do have to just put your head down and keep creating stuff. So it's definitely a fine line. I understand some people would want to get legal about it. But me personally, I have never worried about it. Um, there's such a thing as coincidence as well. There's no reason why someone couldn't come up with exactly the same product or design from the other side of the planet at the exact same moment, or even if it was a different moment. But my opinion on this is like, rather than spending all that negativity and energy on trying to protect something, or also trying to flame someone for copying, I'd rather just keep my head down and just keep busy with creating stuff and moving forward, as opposed to getting hung up on something that requires me to play a game that I'm not good at, being legals or um, lawful stuff, or businessy stuff. So that's my opinion on it, man. Like, I think just do it, and deal with the issues as they come. Okay, another question. I'm gonna make it a point to ask you a question every week. Thank you. That's awesome. Because I love the way you work. Can you see the car scene ever embracing electric like it does JDM? Yeah, man. Like, I think when you talk about electric cars and like maybe the early stuff like Priuses and stuff, I think everyone thought that was a joke. Some people even modified Priuses because it was a joke. But then as soon as like Teslas came out, I don't think any car enthusiast can deny how fast they are, especially in a straight line. I've seen American videos of Tesla owners who've stripped out their cars and are just beating so many cars on the drag strip. Um, I think the handling on these cars, because of the weight of them, is still iffy. And for anyone who is a true a track enthusiast, or someone who loves to just um, loves corners, then yeah, maybe it'll take some time for the weight reduction to kick in. But I don't think there's any doubt that people can be okay with the lack of sound. Look at Formula One. Yeah, sure, like a whole lot of people hate how quiet those cars are, and they at some stage they even brought some sound back on the Formula One cars, right? So I think there's no doubt that the scene will embrace electric cars going forward. I would even say I wouldn't be surprised if the GTR one day is electric. So yeah, it's going to happen. You can't stop technology at this stage, I don't think. And you also have to keep in mind that as more and more of these electric cars come out, you've also got newer and newer generations of people who don't value fuel as much as the old school. So yeah, it's definitely going to happen. I think it's just like how manuals aren't really a big thing anymore, and everyone's going towards like DSG and or even full automatic. So um, same situation, I think, and I'm not salty about it at all. Simple question. What cars do you have now? So I still have the R32 GTR, and I have a Honda Jazz. So it's my fourth or fifth Honda Jazz. This one is completely unmodified. I literally have not washed it since I bought it, and I don't intend to wash it anytime soon. It is filthy. Um, it's like an appliance. I don't look at it as a car. It's like a fridge or a toaster. It just gets me from A to B, and it's so easy to drive that it's like it legit almost teleports me from A to B. Like, I just hop in it and I'm at my destination. It's ridiculous. So I wish I could afford a Tesla, but I couldn't. Okay, next question. What is the most significant artwork you've created and why? Hmm. Okay. In high school, in year 12, I did 6 paintings, but 3 of them were part of a series, an abstract series. I painted with my hands on these humongous canvases, and they were portraits of my band, my rock band at the time. So the first one started out really like Kandinsky inspired, totally abstract. The second one, you can sort of see 3 band members, but it was also really abstract. And the third one had more clarity, and it was just the drummer. And the highlight of creating those 3 pieces for me was when we had our end of year art show, and my school managed to somehow invite Reg Mombasa from Mambo to do the opening speech. And during his opening speech, he mentioned my name and my artworks and how much he loved them. And that was huge for me. Like being in year 12 in high school and having Reg Mombasa say that shit about my artwork was massive. So that is definitely one of my most significant. But to throw a curveball in there, I'd say my Nissan Skyline R32 GTR is a work of art to me. And just how long it took for that car to come together and how much deliberation and design and trial and error and blood, sweat and tears and like chipping off the sound deadening off the floor pan and all the experiences I've had in it and learning how to drive it over the years and drive it faster each time. And it's it's an artwork to me. So yeah, it's arguable, I'm sure, but like I think that is one of my most significant artworks for sure. My R32 GTR. Okay, next question. Um, the music I used to love isn't enjoyable anymore. Wow, that's really sad, man. But fair enough. I ask mates for new music recommendations, but they're still loving the music they always liked. So recommendations, please. Well, I just uploaded the a version of the SoundCloud Zen playlist, which we used to use on our amazing Tumblr, which we had to take down at some point because it was just too rude, apparently. But that SoundCloud playlist was like it took years of work to make it, and you start to spend time, like a great album, you start to spend time on rearranging certain songs so that the whole playlist flowed better. And it's a playlist that I still use today for nearly I would say every single shoot that I do at my place, which is a lot of the shoots. I always have that playlist on because it really works to help me work. It's a good vibe playlist. And I've just kicked off the Spotify playlist, and it's very different to the SoundCloud because the SoundCloud is mostly songs that have been remixed by somebody. So songs that people know, songs that I know and love, but then, in my opinion, taken to another level because they've been remixed by legends. And sometimes they even take two songs that I love and put them into the one, which blows my mind. So the Spotify playlist is a lot cleaner in that it's mostly original versions of some of the songs on the SoundCloud. But I've really enjoyed spending a few hours with that last week, just putting that together. So check it out. I don't know if it's the kind of stuff that you'd like, but hopefully there's some tracks in it that you do like. And last question, also music related. Tell us about why you chose some of the songs on your Spotify playlist. Any reason for picking them? Any standouts? Yeah, so similar to what I was saying about the last. Oh, Mia, chill, please. Okay, so similar things like um, I use that playlist to motivate me to get in the zone, especially with photography. But also if I'm in Photoshop or if I'm just anything where I need to get in the zone over a few hours or an hour or more. And as much as I love heavy metal and hard rock, a lot of that music, the way I look at it is like, when you look at a sound file and you see the bandwidth, like heavy metal has this really thick bandwidth. It's almost like it's a fat sound wave. And electronic music tends to have a more sporadic um, sound wave. It's not so full on all the time. So as much as I do love my metal and my rock, um, sometimes that stuff's just a little bit too loud for the zone. Like I find when I'm shooting or when I'm doing something that still requires me to be creative, but also still be able to think and be fluid, the heavy stuff is almost too abrasive. So as much as I do love it, I don't put it into the playlist. Um, and yeah, it really is a good vibe thing. So especially when I'm shooting with people who have never shot with me before, it's nice to put on music that is filling the space, adding to a level of comfort, and makes me feel comfortable, makes my model feel comfortable. Um, they're the kind of beats that make you want to move, and moving is a good thing when you're shooting. Um, so it's good for me to move around the model. It's good for the model to move as well. So there's that, and there's also some tracks that I've thrown in there that are from memories of being on a dance floor. I used to love my break beats, and I would go clubbing a couple of times a week just to dance my ass off. Not to pick up chicks, not to get wasted, although I did get wasted every week, but it was to dance my ass off. So there are a few tracks in there that just trigger memories, good memories for me, which is really cool. All right, guys. Well, that's all the questions. Thank you so much for sending them in. I truly appreciate it. I hope everybody has a really good week, and I shall catch you guys in the next one. See yous.